Good evening everybody, Flak is back. Now last week I released a video on the submarines and the sharks and the fishing update, and there was a lot of controversy, mainly around the fact that the torpedoes could take out a stone wall with 3 torpedoes and a sheet metal wall with 8 torpedoes. It was way too high. A lot of people were complaining in the comment section about the damage. It's way too OP. I agreed, way too OP. And since then Facepunch has actually tweaked a couple of things regarding the submarines and the actual entire update. So I'm going to very briefly cover it and show you guys what's changed. So what they've done now is they've nerfed the torpedo. So the torpedoes has explosive damage dealt to structures and deployables. It only does 10 damage to them. And then it does 430 damage to soft things like humans, animals, sharks, that type of thing. So that has definitely been nerfed. You can no longer take out water bases now using torpedoes. I mean, I guess you could in theory, because it does 10 damage to wood and 5 damage to stone and sheet metal and armored. So in theory, yes, you could take out a base using torpedoes, but at that cost it'll be way too expensive. So at least that is resolved. Also notice the instrument cluster fully works now, so it's got this little flag. So if you don't have any torpedoes, the flag pops up, and when you put torpedoes in the tank, the flag pops down just to indicate if you have torpedoes left inside that torpedo chute. It might be useful when you're having torpedo warfare with your mates. Speaking of fully functional instrument clusters, all the gauges work. You've got the depth gauge on your left, and on the right of your radar you've got a speedo and fuel gauge. Those work, as well as the radar itself. Now the sonar radar is very cool. It's got green dots and orange dots, if you notice there. Now the green dots are enemies like humans and NPCs, and the orange dots are entrance points onto the underwater labs. Now I don't know if you remember, but in my previous video I really struggled to dock the submarine. It was very difficult to gauge because of the field of view inside the submarine, and I quite literally could not find the hole.
That's what she said.
But now when you go under one of those entrances, that little orange dot starts glowing and it starts flashing really brightly, indicating that you've perfectly aligned inside the docking area. So if you go straight up, you should dock safely. Look at that. That's pretty nice. Now I've disabled the water on the scene just to give you a gauge of how far you can pick up submarines. It looks like it's about 50 meters worth of distance. If I turn the water back on though, it's a different story. It is really difficult to see people. If his headlights are off or I didn't have that sonar, I would not know that he was there. The sonar also picks up enemy divers, although you can hear them breathing when you're inside your submarine. But again, because of that very poor field of vision inside the submarine, it's very difficult to spot them. You can see the sonar blip is on the left of me, so that means that the diver is on the left of me. I can see him there. And bearing in mind that if you have an empty seat at the back, a diver is able to swim down to you and dock with you, so keep your eyes peeled. Now to take out an enemy diver with a torpedo is extremely difficult. I doubt anyone's going to waste 30 gunpowder and 1 metal pipe to take out a single diver, but of course it is possible. Now in last week's video, when I hopped out of the submarine, it floated to the surface. They've changed that now, so if you hop out, your submarine doesn't float, it stays exactly where it is. You can park your submarine on the floor of the ocean, you can hide it somewhere. So instead of going into the docking station of the underwater lab, you can maybe park it off to the side, grab some scuba gear and swim there. That way you don't have to worry about losing your submarine. It's nice to know that if you do run out of fuel, your submarine's not going to just float to the top, it'll just stay exactly where it is. So you can maybe go salvage it after respawning. Facepunch have said that if you leave the lights on when disembarking from the submarine's lights will stay on for 5 minutes, allowing you to do some form of underwater work. I don't know if you want to have an underwater base or if you want to do some aquatic PvP with some spear guns and swords, but you can now light up your battlefield with an unmanned submarine. Also, if you're wondering why the cinematic of the submarine looks so crystal clear, it's because Facepunch have added new underwater cinematics, meaning you cinematic fundies out there do have a more crystal clear view of underwater cinematics, and it is stunning to look at. Good lord. Another epic feature is the roof of the submarine is now a movable platform. Like the back of a pickup or the cargo ship itself, it actually moves players with it, so players can stand on there and not slide off. That is an actual game changer. Very much unlike the rowboat. You see, if I push the rowboat, the player doesn't move with the rowboat. You now have the ability to stand on top of the submarine and have a teammate maybe pilot the submarine and making you a moving target. In theory, this should make taking oil rig a lot easier. That moving platform also has other benefits like jumping onto cargo ship. You can now jump and mount a ladder, although I don't think anyone's going to leave a submarine that costs 300 scrap out in the ocean whilst they board cargo ship. The underwater scientists now have a new name. They are called underwater dwellers, and they have blue jumpsuits, no longer orange, and are wearing scuba gear. They still can't aim though. Something incredibly cool I found out was the fact that the underwater labs are procedurally generated. So this entire structure that you see, all these multi-levels, is fully procedurally generated, and I actually find that incredibly fascinating. You can actually see these two pods here clipping through each other. They are actually clipping through each other accidentally because this entire structure is procedurally generated. Now, I can't believe the fact that everything that you can see here, all these decorations, all these card puzzles from last week's video that I showed you, all generates automatically. So you'll never actually find an underwater lab the same as last week's wipe, which is, in my mind, it's mind-blowing, the fact that this whole room, this whole area can be procedurally generated. Because, I mean, look how many floors there are. With functional card puzzles, it's densely complicated in my mind. To help navigate this absolute labyrinth is these new map markers. Now it's got different water drops there. You can see those are the different levels of the underwater lab. So you can click and navigate your way through. You can see docking stations on different floors over here. There's docking station for floor number 1, and down there's docking station for floor number 2. Floor number 3 looks very chunky over there, and then floor 4 at the top. It even shows the railway network. If you zoom out, you can see the whole rail network as well as the normal map. Quite a far cry from the map system we had 4 years ago, where you actually had to craft a map out of paper. The torpedoes are now learnable on a tier 2 workbench just under HV rockets. And on a tier 1 workbench, we now have the ability to learn the spear gun and spears. I'm busy clicking right now, but unfortunately the spear guns no longer fire out of water. Last week they could, but now you can't. In the water though, they do fire quite nicely. They do 60 damage to the body and 80 damage to the head. Quite a powerful weapon indeed. And it only takes 2 spears to kill a shark. On the topic of sharks, they seem to spawn around rock formations, sunken ships, you know, the underwater labs. I usually find them around there. I don't find them out in the ocean. And unlike last week, they're a lot more placid. They don't attack you unless they get really close. And once they bite at you or you shoot at them, they circle around for another attack, giving you time to at least fight. And even when they're dead, they're still absolute nightmare fuel. They've also made dead sharks sink to the ocean floor, and you can harvest them for a very mediocre amount of resources. That pretty much covers all the changes to this week's update. I do hope you have a ton of fun when it comes to the wipe, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you to my darling patrons for your endless support, and thank you so much for watching. Until next time, Flak out.